Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough, and again, welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm excited to have with me today Commissioner Mr. Fleming El-Amin. I want to thank you and welcome you to Off the Cuffs today, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure to have you. Always when we have guests, especially from across the street, Commissioner, I want to thank you personally, sir, for what you do in this community and the services that you make possible for us to do what we do over here at the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office throughout the community. I just want to personally thank you and the commissioners for that. But what we all like to do is we like to have our guests tell us who you are. I know who you are. A lot of people know who Fleming El-Amin is, but please share with us who you are, some of your background, and from whence you come. And I love to start the conversation like that.
Thank you very much. The High Honorable Sheriff Kimbrough. It's always an honor for me to be in your presence. In a nutshell, in the words of Richard Wright, I'm a native son. I grew up in my grandfather's grocery store, Jackson Grocery and Fish Market, 1301 East First Street, as a little big-headed clerk. In fact, I was in the second grade. And my grandfather, Mr. Fleming Jackson, gave me my very first job as his clerk. So I grew up in a grocery store and cleaning fish when I got in about the sixth grade, which was not a pleasant experience if you want to speak to the young ladies afterwards, That fish smell stays with you for a while. But he paid me $5 an hour. Not an hour, I take that back, a week.
A week? $5 a week?
A plate lunch was 25 cents then.
Wow.
So I'm going back a few years.
You don't look that old.
Well, I'm a young 70 with 13 grandkids and 5 grown kids and been married 48 years and counting. Met my wife when I was 17, and we've been together ever since. So it's a blessing on too many levels. She put up with me 48 years plus. But that's in a nutshell the background. This is my home. I went to Anderson Junior Senior High School, graduated in 1970, and because of the academic preparation I got there, I got a scholarship to go to Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And really was through an Upward program that I discovered Cornell. My intent was to follow my girlfriend then. She went to Spelman. I wanted to go to Morehouse so we could be friends during college years, right across the street from each other. In fact, I went down to Morehouse and spent the weekend and got some money offered there. But when I got back home, I had a full scholarship from Cornell College and a letter. So I said, I can't turn this down. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college.
It's free, right?
Yeah, it's free. So we left here and went to Mount Vernon, Iowa, a whole new experience. And from there, very quickly, we stopped in Chicago. I had my first job in Chicago, teaching high school and working at a bank. And we decided I wanted to go back to graduate school. So I went to Arizona to a place called the American Graduate School of International Management in Phoenix. And
from there,
left there and went to New York. I got hired by Chase Manhattan Bank to come there as a Wall Street banker for a while. At the time, David Rockefeller.
So you worked on Wall Street?
Went to Wall Street, yes. I
worked
there.
I never knew that.
Under David Rockefeller. He was my boss. Every Friday we met with him. He was the chairman of the bank then. It was not merged in with another bank. It was an independent, standalone, third largest bank in the world at that point. So I learned a lot from that experience. But Bobby, I discovered also about myself. I didn't like the way big corporations made loans with each other. I'll give you an example. Every evening we go down to a place called Hanover Square in the heart of Wall Street.
Yeah.
So if you're my client, I would take you down there for a beverage.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. James Dean, who was my manager, said, Fleming, just do what I do. Whatever I order, you order. So he tells the bartender, I'd like to have a banker special. I had no idea what a banker special was, but our client was drinking scotch and water. And we're negotiating prime, points above, points below.
Yeah.
A banker special is just ginger ale and orange juice with a cherry on top. So you're really drinking soda, your client is drinking alcohol, and you're negotiating points above and below prime. The next day you go to the office and sign the paperwork. And the big business was done that way in Wall Street. I mean, multi-million-dollar contracts, not these, house loans. I mean, major loans. So that was not selling well in my soul. That's not the way my grandfather raised me. So I said, listen, I did that for a while. When I got a chance to come back to North Carolina, I did. And came back home. And then my wife got a position at Bowling Green State University to teach there. She has a PhD in reading, actually. So she went there, and I could go to school there to get my PhD free. Again, a free opportunity. Yeah. So we left home again, went to Ohio, stayed there about 5 years so I could work on my doctorate. And we decided it was time to come back home. So we had made the traveling from Chicago to New York. She went to school down at Mississippi to get her doctorate.
Did you finish up there?
Did everything. I'm ABD. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
ABD because they go back to work.
Right.
But my intent is to go back and wrap that up now that I'm retired.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, hint.
Mm-hmm.
From
Yeah.
an official job.
Right.
But you know what it's like being a commissioner.
Oh, I
There's
do.
always something to do.
Always something going on.
So that's a little nutshell, you know.
You know what's interesting about what you just said? Two things. One is my uncle worked for the Rockefellers. He was sort of what they call their all-purpose person. He drove for them, took the kids to school, and basically he was a driver for the Rockefellers. As a matter of fact, the grandson came down for his funeral when he died a year and a half ago. He died up off Renault Road in the assisted living place he was living in. He just went to sleep and didn't wake up. And I'll never forget, we used to go up there during the summers. So my grandfather lived in New York, and I would go up in the summers, and I would spend a little time with my Uncle Lawrence, who's deceased, who worked for the Rockefellers. And then I would continue on to Boston, where my Uncle Lawrence, he's deceased, he was in school up at Cambridge, up at Harvard. And so, yeah, small world.
Small world.
Yeah. So I can just only imagine what that would have been like working on Wall Street. That's huge. So what made you come back and get into education?
Two things. One, my parents were aging, and my immediate children really not know their grandparents that well, because we left Chicago, we got started, Arizona, now New York.
Yeah.
And my wife and I had a decision to make. Do we want to go? They wanted to send me to Kano, Nigeria, Chase, to run the facility in Kano, the northern part of Nigeria. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to take my family overseas at that point? And they had a lot of disruption in the northern part of Nigeria then, a lot of turmoil, civil strife.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I prefer to take the kids back to North Carolina, get to know their grandparents. I'll make the transition. In fact, I was interviewed by Wachovia for a position here. And when I showed up and live in color, they had a different opinion. So that's why I went back in education. I had to, as they say, punt again and get involved in education. That's life, you know. So I was glad I did that, because I really enjoyed working with students. I had the chance to work at Winston-Salem State University teaching statistics over there for a while. In fact, that's how I got to know Ellen Jones. They needed someone to do a feasibility study to get money to build what used to be called the Stouffer Hotel. Now it's the Marriott downtown.
Right.
The money for that hotel came from federal grant money, the UDAG grant. But the deal was this. They couldn't get the money unless they built something in a, quote, plighted area. The plighted area, Bob, was East Winston Shopping Center. So that shopping center came about because of the grant money from the federal government that built the Stouffer Hotel, now called the Marriott downtown.
So explain that, because a lot of people don't know what that means when you say they had to build in a plighted area.
Okay. The specs from the federal government grants have certain specs requirements on it. So if you build something downtown, you got to also build something in a, quote, poor, marginalized community to qualify for the grant.
I get it.
At that point, they didn't have an East Winston Shopping Center. So my statistics students did a feasibility study. They knocked on doors. We passed off 15,000 surveys. We collated the data. And that was submitted to the city of Winston-Salem to get them to qualify for the money to build that nice shopping center, the nice hotel downtown and East Winston Shopping Center, the Stouffers. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's how East Winston Shopping, the first one got built. It was from the students and my statistics students at Winston-Salem State doing the legwork.
So which one came first?
They came basically the same time, because the grant came at one time, one part of money. Of course, you know, downtown jumped on top of it. And this is a tragedy behind that whole situation. They built the shopping center, but the shell of it only. And they said you had to finish off the interior yourself with your own money, which what happens, you don't follow the details. Someone should have made sure the details was,
I've always heard the devil is in the
details. And we only had one brother. He worked at NCMB at that time, Sledge. He had a fish market over there.
Yeah.
That was the only thing owned in that shopping center by black-owned people. Everything else, people had to wait to get money to finish off the interior. And at that time, I went back to school, so I'd lost contact. And then I got a phone call. Someone said, Fleming, they're trying to sell stock in the shopping center. I said, that's not how a shopping center operates. You don't make money in stock off of a shopping center. Whose idea is that? Long story short, a lawyer did it. He went to jail behind it. He's out now.
Wow.
Which is something we should learn. We learn from our mistakes and do better the next time around.
We do. So where did you start teaching it?
My first job actually was at Anderson Junior Senior High School. where I graduated from.
You graduated from.
And so they had me in the CDC room, is what they called it, part-time. And then I'll never forget, Miss McCarter gave me my first little job. And then some of my teachers, like Mr. Anderson and Mr. Campbell, they would have me come substitute.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the school system may have been offered to work full-time at on South Main Street as a CDC teacher, mainly in Classroom for Development and Change. So I started there in about 80, 81, after I left from Salem State University. From that position, I went to Glenn High School. And I worked at Glenn for a number of years. I retired from Glenn.
What year did you leave Glenn?
About 10 years ago now. So what is this, 2000?
Since 2022.
Okay. Sure, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Roughly. But I stayed out there. I was approaching my 30th year when I left. And I left to go back to pursue my doctoral degree, actually. That's when I left to go back to Ohio with my wife. And while I was in Ohio, believe it or not, they asked me to run a charter school. Bob, I had no desire, no intent. But these people were trying to get a charter school organized. So I helped them put the paperwork together. And then they said, listen, Fleming, you got to come with this package. Because these people have the idea, you have the experience. So I became a principal of a school called Monroe Academy in Toledo, Ohio for a while I was trying to finish up my paperwork to get my program finished. So it was a good experience for me to have a charter school experience as a principal and what that entails. The downside of that, the board for charter schools aren't as accountable as the public schools are. But it's your tax dollars being used for that purpose. So you should have that experience to really know how that whole system operates.
So what sparked your curiosity to get into politics, decide to run for the county commission?
One person, Miss Maisie Woodruff, God rest her soul. She was my mentor. In fact, Barbara, she actually told me one time, she said, Fleming, you're always criticizing politicians. You got 5 babies to feed. Do you know politicians influence the price of bread? Do you want to feed your babies? You better get involved. That's how I became a precinct chair for a long time under her tutelage. She said, Fleming, you have skills. Why don't you use those skills to help the party out? So eventually I became chairman of the Democratic Party. And from that position, they asked me to serve, once I stepped down and did my 2 terms, to serve on the Board of Elections. So I did that for a while. And during that episode, Walter Marshall became ill. And he called me and said, Fleming, listen, you told me you would never run against me.
Malcolm Marshall.
Yes, Mr. Walter Marshall.
Yeah.
Good friend, right?
Yeah.
And I said, Walter,
Malcolm's father, right?
Yes, Malcolm's father.
I know Malcolm very well.
The weight guy. Man, yes.
Yeah.
He looks like he would knock you down with a fingertip.
Yeah.
But good brother, though. Good brother.
Yeah.
And so from that experience, Walter told some people on the commission, Fleming's going to replace me. Now, the way the process worked, the Democratic Party had decided who would replace him. And I had been chairman. Mm-hmm. So I went down. There was 4 people running against me. I think I got 92% of the vote. So that's how I became a county commissioner. So I finished Marshall's term, then I ran on my own record. And because I've been in the community for so long doing different things, it was a relatively easy campaign for me.
So I've asked 2 of the other commissioners that have been on here with me, Dr. Martin and Mr. Danny, what's it like being a county commissioner? I've asked them the same thing. What's it like? I mean, a lot of people don't really know that you all provide the funding and decide how much funding. If there's an issue, I have to go plead my case with you all to make sure that we're getting what we need. So what's it like, the behind the scenes, the ins and out? Mm-hmm. I've asked both of them the same question. Mm-hmm. I know you guys don't sit up there and look intelligent, but it's more behind the scene that takes place because you guys are briefed on about everything that's going on in the county.
Yes. In fact, there's a lot of homework involved. And as an educator, if you don't like to read, and I mean read documents, to see the source of what you're going to make a decision on, it may not be the job for you because there's a lot of reading required. We have 4 statutory obligations to fulfill as commissioners. One of them, as you said, is the Sheriff's Department. Mm-hmm. We're required also to fund K through 12 education and the community colleges. Mm-hmm. Those funds come from the county commissioners. We're required to fund DSS, Department of Social Services, public health, all right? And also what they call community values, like public libraries. We fund public libraries, county parks, first responders. Now just imagine those are many different demands. So there's always
huge.
Yes, there's always a demand on your time. So if you don't like dealing with the public, if you don't have a sense of community servant leadership, just to help people out, that's got to be your motivation. If that's not a part of your internal motivation, you may find it difficult. Because I worked in the school system so long and dealt with so many different issues along the way, the public doesn't really bother them. It's like a compliment to my personality. So you got to have that kind of thick skin. You're going to always
gotta
be
have
criticized.
a love for the people.
You got to have it. You got to have it, you know.
Yeah.
And see beyond yourself. It's like, I tell people all the time, I taught economics and statistics and civics for a long time. And I would have my students to read the Constitution carefully. I'd ask them one question, Bobby. How many times did you read the word I in the U.S. Constitution?
We.
There's no I in it. It's always
not.
we.
It's we.
So you got to have a we concept in government. And in the county commission, you got 7 people. It's we the people. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. I won't go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But there's 6 reasons in the preamble
Yeah.
as to why we have a constitution. Now, if you go before that with the Declaration of Independence, you find the word he mentioned a lot because they're talking about old King George and what he was doing to the people there.
Right.
They charged him with 33 different things that he was doing. But that second paragraph is the most important part of it. And it reads as follows. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That has to be your core of operation as a county commissioner. And you just substitute the word man for mankind, including women, and that's your mode of operation to be successful.
That's strong, man. That's strong. Yeah. I like that. Because if you operate from there, then you've covered your bases. You've done what is right.
Yes, sir.
I like that. So is there a special formula when you look at something of the numbers, who gets what, who don't get what, the dollar amount? So how does that usually work when they look in and they look? So you might say, well, this particular agency is requesting this, but this particular agency is requesting that. How do you look at the formula? Because you, like you said, there's a lot of reading involved in that.
Yes. You know, the old saying is that you want to check a man's heart, follow the dollars.
Yeah.
So your values will align with your dollar allocations. Some of us are more concerned with community influence, no matter where it comes from.
Right.
Community focus, community outcomes, community outreach. That's the focus for many of us. Others are concerned about traditional allocations because that's their mind thought pattern, right? Personally, you know, growing up in this community, being a native son, I'm more concerned about community-focused agencies than the traditional ones. And I'll tell you why. The impact is more specific.
Right.
You have one person, I give one example, Miss, I call the mayor of Cleveland Projects, Miss Young.
Miss Young.
And her, you know, 90 years, right? Been in that same place for 50 years. Now, there was an incident a few years ago. I'm at the Emerald Island with my family. That's where we go for vacation. I get a call, El-Amin, somebody went by her house shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Shot 5 times, hit her car, and ran behind her house. I said, listen, as soon as I get back, I'll go to her house and see what really happened. So I went to her house, Bobby. She said, El-Amin, you're the only one to come by my house. I said, Miss Young, we're going to make you whole again. Don't worry about the cost of repairing your car. I can call a few people and take care of this for you. But just describe for me the best way you can. Who did you see? She said, Fleming, he took his shirt off, ran behind my house and ran down the little drive, little sidewalk.
I know where,
I said, well, listen, I'm from here. I don't mind walking down the sidewalk and see what I can see. So I'm walking down there and everybody closing the doors, looking at me funny. I said, I know what this is all about, you know. So I came back out and walked up to her house. I said, well, you know, somebody knows this guy. And the last word I heard about there was somebody from the Rolling Hills situation, had some beef with somebody in Cleveland, and that's what the whole thing boiled down to.
Exactly.
You know, so that's the kind of concern you got to have. And that's why I commit money to community-focused activities, because that's what people live at. It's okay to build things, but when you do services, you really impact their life and the quality of life immediately.
So let me ask you this. So I've always said that the news did a story on it yesterday talking about the violence that are happening in the city, happening in the community. And they talked about, I think we had 17 versus
13 from last year.
No, 9 from last year. 9 from last year, 17 today.
Yes.
Basically almost doubled. And so when I look around, you and I have a lot in common. We're both I like that native sons, come out of East Winston. And I look around and I see so many social issues that create these criminal justice issues, so many social issues that have not been addressed and have not been met. What do you see when you see the violence and everything that's happening, the cause or the root cause of it as the commissioner and being a native son?
First, I see myself in that situation because those are my children, fundamentally. We have to have that kind of perception of them because then we can do something to help them. And then I'm involved in JCPC, which means our Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Yeah.
And we have a number of different agencies we provide funds for to help young people have a different way of thinking and also to give them a second chance. All right? So the county allocates money for that purpose, JCPC. I think the county supported JEDI with some funding through the Sheriff's Department. And the county provided some funds for a new group called Cure Violence. All this is sort of dedicated to doing something to make a difference. The root of all that, as she said, is social ills. Here's an example. When I was teaching high school, I loved my students. So I would watch them, observe them. I would sort of sense what was going on with them. I had a young lady who was an A student drop down to almost a D student from being very alert to putting her head on the desk every day. So I said, listen, can we talk privately after school just for a minute or after class? Tell me when it's convenient for you. After class, she said, Mr. El-Amin, my mother walked out of the house. I got a 6-year-old sister in the house. It's just me and her. And I'm trying to feed her the best way I can. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It'll make you cry.
But we transferred her to Carver because kids can be sort of cruel.
Yeah.
They're that teenage thing, they don't, so they were making fun of her. Brilliant student. She went to Carver, graduated, went to the Air Force. Her donor to her existence showed up at her graduation. Hadn't seen the guy in 8 years. To me, it was like an annoyance. Where have you been since this child tried to operate by herself? So she went up to the Air Force, wrote me a letter, but I still have it. Basically thanking me for what I did for her. Now, those were social ills. Had we not intervened and got her into a whole...
She never would have got out.
She would have made it. She would have dropped out of school the whole 9 yards. So that's just one example. And I apologize, but it's...
No.
It's dear to my heart,
I don't think sometimes that people realize what's really going on in our city. Sometimes people are struggling. People are dealing with some issues they're dealing with. I go up to North Hills Elementary every Monday, and I thank the school system, Ms. McManus and her whole staff for allowing, as well as the principal there, they allow me to come in every Monday and teach a class. And some of the things that I see, and I'm talking about 4th grade kids, that it's almost like it's going to take a miracle for them to be successful. It's going to take a lot of intervention. It's going to take a lot of funding and a whole new way of thinking. And it's amazing to me what I see sometimes as to how we make decisions sometimes that create these conditions, I don't think people realize that the decisions create conditions.
Oh, yes.
And that shows that you have a heart, because for your emotions to come like that, that shows that you care. And we've got to have people that care because there is so much happening. So I guess I'll move it along. So let me ask you this then. So, and I appreciate what you did for that girl. Don't know her, but as a community, we appreciate what you did for her, because anyone that makes it, they're making us better in the community. So let me ask you this. So from where you sit and what you see, if you had a magic wand or you had some ideas or some suggestions, what would you do to change the narrative, the trajectory of what's happening in our community?
We've got to start with the youth. Now, I was literally down at Hallwood with speaking to a group of 4th and 5th graders the other day.
Yeah.
They had a career day. And so they asked me to come in and explain to them, what is the job of a county commissioner? So I put a PowerPoint together.
Yeah.
You know, and in my heart of hearts, I'm an educator. I love children. And
I can tell how detailed you are.
In the classroom. So these little kids, I had them ask some questions. I said, can you be in 5 places at the same time? Think about that. Then I showed them a picture of the earth, picture of the continent, picture of the United States, the state, and the county. I said, at the same time, you're in all these places. They just got all excited, the whole, little kids.
I like that one.
And then we,
the
same time.
That's sharp.
But they got engaged, and that's what you have to do with children.
Yeah.
Now, if you're concerned about children, we have a chance of changing the world. If you don't have a heart for children, that is our present and our future.
Without question.
So whatever we have to do, all of them need advocates more today than yesterday. The young lady I talked about earlier, her mother was a crack addict. I had no idea what crack was when I encountered this. Somebody said, Fleming, you see somebody doing this in a club, they're looking for residue from crack put into a pipe. I said, what is crack? Now, that's how innocent I was.
Yeah.
I had no idea what crack was, right? And this lady became, on Walltown, a $5 walker, and I want to fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah.
But she left her child behind that. I mean, that's a strong addiction thing, and we can't ignore that in the community. To me, if you come into the community and you selling illegal drugs, to me, you're an enemy to the community.
Without question.
I used to tell my students, Glenn, if I catch you personally, I would say some kind of fishing wire of some sort.
Yeah.
And, put you in a position where the public can see you hanging by your testicles on a wall somewhere. They say, oh, no, Mr. El-Amin. I said, well, why should I treat you like that? You're killing the community. And for the young ladies, whatever they have that will be available, I would do the same thing with them. I would not discriminate. But they said, oh, that's so cruel, Mr. El-Amin. I said, listen, what's cruel is that you get caught up in a habit you can't control. You don't lose your life. Your mother is going to be worried about you, your father. You're going to impact your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncles. The whole family is impacted. So to me, that's a minor thing. So we got to start with the children. Now, a lot of money came in through ARPA funding. The school got about $212 million. County got 74.5. The city got $55 million, right? I want us to pool some of that money.
Yeah.
That was my intent. I talked to some stakeholders. I said, why are we spending this separately? Why don't we agree on one major investment and everybody roll up their sleeves and go to work on that? And let's break down this artificial barrier between city and county and public schools. So my first priority is, what can we do? Starting with reading. Ensure that every child can read by the 3rd grade on par with what they should be reading at. We have too many kids get to the 3rd grade and they still got a 1st grade education in terms of reading ability. Now, my wife has a PhD in reading. She was the only one at Winston-Salem State when she taught down there that had a PhD in reading from Bowling Green State. She went to Mississippi State to get her PhD, University of Mississippi in Hattiesburg. She's a guru when it comes to reading. And she said they got $1 billion industry set up based on reading schools in the 3rd grade. If you don't successfully read by the 3rd grade, they project you're going to be incarcerated by a certain age, and they build prisons accordingly.
That's true.
So reading's got to be a thing that we attack holistically. Everybody, if you can read a paragraph, help a child read a sentence.
So what's interesting about that? So 2 things that you sparked a mind-sharing thought was, one is that the impacts that drugs have on our community.
Yes.
I spent decades of fighting the drug war as a special agent, and I saw the impact of cocaine and a lot of things what it does to our community. I was in some countries and I saw how and what we did, and that's a whole nother story. At some point I'm going to write about it, but here's what I was thinking about just now when you said that, is how anytime someone is arrested on the federal level, they fill out what is called a 202 form. Okay. That's a personal history form. It's called a 202. And basically that 202 form, and one of the questions is asked is that the level of education that you've completed, right? And what was interesting that what we found out was a lot of folk did not complete high school. Very few, and I do mean very, very few, went on beyond that and had college degrees. Very few. And I guess to your point is that not only is reading is fundamental, reading assures you some level of success in this society, because you can't read. If you can't read, you can't compete in this society. You know.
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting.
Yeah, on a personal note, my oldest brother, my father's child, was from here. He used to run with a group called 11th Street Bottom. They call themselves the Untouchables, Junior Untouchables.
Yeah.
That whole image, right?
Yeah.
He used to carry a little gun in his little shirt pocket and pretending to be bad.
Yeah.
He got caught as a heroin addict, caught up in drugs, went to New York. His habit, according to my father, was $400 a day. He went to try to find him up in the Bronx, right? Bring him back home. He went from a 190-pound athlete to about 90-pound skeleton. And my father couldn't convince him to come back home to Winston-Salem. So he had no choice but to leave him there. Now, shortly after that, I was leaving Chicago, Arizona, moving to New York. So I got there about that time. While I was in New York, they called me to go down to the morgue and identify my oldest brother. And what had happened, he went to prison, which was good. But instead of going to North Carolina, after he got out, we went back up to New York. And they said he owed them some money, drug situation. So supposedly one of his best friends and him got into a little beef. And my brother could sort of take care of himself, but he turned his back on this guy. And they came behind him and cut him on both of his jugular veins. So he basically bled to death trying to crawl back to where he lived at. And the superintendent of the department says, your brother Robert, had he not turned his back, it would have been a different story. But they set him up to kill him, basically. So I have zero tolerance for drug dealers, absolutely zero tolerance. And so anyone who thinks that's an easy money, you are a disease on the community. And the people I associate with consider you a disease. And what do we have to do to take you out in terms of, giving you some options first? But the disease has to be eliminated from those of us who have the moral fiber to make a stand on that and have the same position about reading for our children. We got to be serious about our children's education. I have 13 grandkids.
I have 3.
And I do everything I can to make sure. In fact, my wife gave all our kids, when they were growing up, books for holidays. Like, when are you going to give them some toys? But that was first you get a book, then we get a toy, right?
Right.
We want to make sure that all the kids have the reading down pack, And then you give them an opportunity to pursue what their dreams are eventually,
It's interesting when you said the use of heroin. There was a heroin addict when I was growing up, and this is going to sound crazy, who sold so much knowledge into me. Name is Kenny. Kenny Ray is what we call him. They called him Horse on the Street. Kenny probably was about 6'8", one heck of a basketball player in his day, and went up to Washington State and got hooked on drugs and came back home. And as a little boy growing up, I used to leave my house at 405 East 25th Street and walk 200 yards, if that, in the Bloom Park, probably 100 yards in the Bloom Park. And I'll never forget, as a little boy, I would pass the picnic table, going up there to shoot basketball, and I would see him shooting up as a little boy. I remember that. And I'll never forget. So when I got to the ripe old age at 14, 15, I thought that it would be cool to drink. And we should go down to the little general store right beside the 7-Eleven, right there on Patterson, and buy Boom Farm and Mad Dog, and go back to the park and sit there, me and the little 14, 15-year-old guys that I was hanging out with. And I'll never forget sitting up there one day, and he walked up to me and slapped me and told me that I was better than that. And I was 14 years old. And he told me if he ever saw me with anything alcohol in my hand, that he would hurt me. And I said, how are you going to talk to me or hit me when you're an addict? And he told me, I don't never want you to be an addict, alcohol, or nothing. I don't want nothing to control you. You got too much to give. And I'll never forget that, because maybe a time or two after that, me and my same buddies were out drinking Mad Dog at 15. I bumped my eye and they took me home, rang the doorbell and left. And my dad didn't speak to me for a week or two. You know, when you do wrong, my mom would say, Bobby, look at your son. My dad is Bobby Sr. But when I'm shining, my mom would claim me as her son, right? It's one of those type of things. And so my dad told me, and I never forgot this, and that was a turning point in my life as it relates to drinking wine. He told me that all you're doing is killing yourself. I expect and deserve more from you than that. I worked 2 jobs just so you could have everything you want. At that time, he was working at number 12, which is now
Government Center.
The Government Center.
Yes.
And then he worked at a place that many people don't even know existed, B&G Pie Company, down off of Marshall Street. And he would bring lemon pies and apple pies home, I mean, by the bag load. And so I looked at him and I made him a promise. And I said, Dad, I'll never drink alcohol, wine again. I was, 14, 15. I haven't had a drink of alcohol since I was 14. I'm 60 now. But Kenny, who I was referencing, was an addict, heroin addict. And he was like a protector of me. It was strange. He was a protector of me. When I went to the park to play basketball, he would stand around the courts and make sure I was all right. Even though he was an addict, they respected him because they knew that he would fight. Okay. And so Kenny later was diagnosed with an ugly disease, and he's in a wheelchair now. I see him from time to time during Christmas. You know, he's ringing the bell with the Salvation Army. But you're absolutely right. Drugs have affected our community in ways that we never thought. And to allow them into our community will break and will and is tearing our community down. So like you, I have a zero tolerance for that too. Can
I share a quick story with you?
Of course.
My older brother I just referenced, whose body I had to go identify in New York, when he would come around our house as a little boy, he would say, "Bruh," which is my nickname, "whatever you do, don't be like me."
That's what Kenny would tell me. He would tell me, don't be like, he would tell me, you're not going to be like me. And he would tell me, you're not going to be like, he called him Dinky Dial. I don't know what Dinky Dials meant, but you're not going to be a Dinky Dial growing up, right? And as a little boy, you know, very impressionable. I was very headstrong, and I never forgot the lessons growing up, because it was a strange, when I look back now, it was like the older guys in the community, they shielded me. They saw something in me, from Moochie to Guy to Third to Greg to Pap. All them boys saw something in me, even though they could have been doing anything they wanted to do. They kept me away and would not let nothing happen to me. It was the strangest thing growing up. And now when I look back at it and I see them, it just touches me that I had angels around me, even as a little boy growing up, that they was like, no. But it made me think about that when you started talking about that, how, you know, a guy who was a heroin addict looked after me, you know, as a little boy. He was 10 years older than I was, but he looked after me.
And now we have the obligation to be angels to someone else in the community.
Exactly.
It's on us now to pass.
So let me ask you this as we kind of move toward the conclusion. And I say this all the time, and, you know, you might agree or disagree with this. So I'm going to try to paint the picture. So if you live in the city, right, you pay county taxes, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you live in the city, you vote in a countywide election.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
So my question is this. Should the people in the city expect county services from those that they vote for and a county that they pay taxes for?
Absolutely.
Okay. Then my next question is, if you agree with that, then my next question is that how do you feel about when we're budgeting? Should we budget if an agency serves in both places? Should we budget their budget for them to operate in the city as well as the county?
Mm. For me, Bob, it's a no-brainer.
And the reason I say that, and here's where I'm going with it, and the reason I say that, because this morning a buddy of mine, he and I talk at least once a week. I won't say his name because he's still a special agent with the government. He calls me this morning and says, he and I always joke back and forth. He's one of my better friends. I mean, he says, I was sitting here looking at Fox News and it came across where it seemed like y'all having a problem over there in the city, right? And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, all the killings y'all got going over there. And he says, what are y'all going to do? Or more importantly, what are you going to do?
Mm.
And so he says, I want to know who's responsible for making sure that the people are safe so I know where to file my complaints at. And so I said to him, I said, well, we're working in this together to serve both the city and the county. And so he and I were joking back and forth on the phone. And what I said to him was that, and I said it to Dr. Martin when we were sitting here, is that a police chief and a sheriff, even though they're both head of a law enforcement agency, one operates more freely than the other one has the ability to do. Before one operates, they have the blessings of so many people above them, and they have to be careful because by them being selected versus elected.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question that I always come back to is that what is the role of the commissioners when we talk about funding an agency that serves in both parts of the city and the county?
Mm. Well, we got two good examples already operating. Remember I said earlier we should break down that traditional barrier between city and county?
You said that.
We have a city-county planning board that we've agreed to fund both city and county. We have a city-county zoning board, utility commission, city-county.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why it shouldn't be easy to operate.
City-county operators too.
Yes.
911 system.
Now, so we have the pattern already set up. So an agency like the Sheriff's Department, who operates in both the city and the county, it shouldn't even be a second thought. That agency should be given all the resources they need to serve both entities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some statutory things we have to do by statute, right?
Right.
One is to provide funds for you.
Of course.
So whatever funds
and
you
I appreciate
need.
you.
Yeah. And if you know my record when it comes down to that, right?
I appreciate you.
And there's some that are very, very conservative on the other extreme. But as far as I'm concerned, whatever you need to make our children safe, to provide those services that no one else is providing in the community, you should get those funds, hands down. And I work with the chief of police too, because I live not far from Wake Forest in a little community.
I know.
And we've been very blessed in that community, with very little crime kind of thing. But go down the street is a whole different ball game, or around the corner, a whole different ball game. So I'm always sensitive to what's going on in the full community, not just my little neighborhood. And we've had some issues. One of my buddies is, we do some community service together, Coach Bill Hayes. We do some community work together.
I saw him yesterday.
Yeah. Brilliant man, icon in the community when it comes to athletic.
Saw him yesterday.
Influenced a lot of young men to make them better men, not just football players, right? So he and I worked together on some issues in the community. We had an issue with Vulcan Materials, for example. They want to come in and rezone a section close to our neighborhood. That's the biggest investment the average one of us has is our homes.
Without question.
So we fought it, and we won the first round. Now it's going to be a second round, but it takes collaboration, working together. So why can't the city and the county get the funding they need to make our communities safe? To me, it's not even a debate issue. It's not even a question to really think about that much. No research is needed. Just provide the service and the funds that's needed to make our communities safe, plain and simple.
I really appreciate that. I saw Coach Hayes yesterday. He was at the African American Moravian Church, the oldest African American Moravian church in the country.
Yes.
He was there yesterday for the, a lot of people was there. Martha Wood, I saw quite a few people there that was there for that. Yeah. But I feel I'm very fortunate to have gotten a lot of the things that I've gotten from the commissioners. I appreciate you all. You know, everywhere I go, I talk about the support that my commissioners show me. I talk about, you know, sometimes, you know, and I get it. Sometimes it's a fight. It's, you know, I don't mean a fisticuff, but sometimes it's a tug of war, and I guess that's what it's supposed to be. That's the balancing of power. But I want you to know that we appreciate all that you all do. I appreciate you because it's not an easy job being elected. It's not an easy job sitting making the decisions that you all make. I know it's not. I know that you're bombarded with requests, not only from the agencies that you're obligated to, but the people that live in this city and this county. And my job every day is to try to break down walls, break down barriers that separate the city, that separate the county. Because at the end of the day, as we've said many times before, we're all in this together. In 2018, you know, I made the comment about better together. I said that at the swearing in ceremony, that we are better together because we are. And we have to erase those lines and move them down. So as we get ready to go home, I want you to have the last word because I have truly enjoyed talking with you. You're very intellectual. It's the first time I've ever sat this long and talked with you and really got to go in and out. I never knew you worked on Wall Street. I never knew you was finishing up a PhD. It's been a very interesting conversation. A lot of things that you do in the community. I'm grateful for that. So with that, I'll let you have the last word before we go to the house.
Well, again, I want to thank you, Sheriff Kimbrough.
Yeah.
Give you a proper title. The High Honored Sheriff. You know, we take so much pride. When I say we, I'm talking about my immediate family and just seeing you as the sheriff of our community. You elevate all of us by providing the service you provide for the community. In essence, I'm a fundamental community servant leader. I've been doing that for decades, not just during election time, but many people see me in the community long before I ever became an elected official. And so I hope that people can see that as we go into this re-election cycle. I would hope that they would just look at my record, look at what I do, not what I promise, look at what I do and make your decision that way. And I want to thank you for this opportunity and encourage everybody, do your civic duty. Voting is a sacred trust. I spent 6 weeks on the continent of Africa back in the summer of 2000. I've been to those slave castles where people had to come out of as chattel slavery. And I end with this image. I went down to one of those in Ghana and I asked our Heavenly Father, why in the world did we have to become subjected to chattel slavery? Out of all the people in the world, different forms of slavery, but to be branded as an animal is the lowest form of slavery. This is what came back to me in the quiet of my soul. Fleming, you are the answer to your ancestors' prayers. I don't mean individually, collectively. So go back home and be the best human being you can be and be of service to your community. That's what I've been trying to do. I hope that you would entrust me to continue doing that journey. And again, I thank you for this opportunity.
You know, I want to leave on a note. You just pricked my soul again. Yesterday, we were talking about ancestors at the Moravian Church, African American Moravian Church. And I looked out into the audience. I went in there with a message, but when I got in there, I was overcome with ancestors of yesterday, my ancestors, ancestors, black and white, that attended the service yesterday. And what spoke to my soul is that our ancestors wanted so much more for us. Our ancestors knew that one day, as the great king said, that I've been there and I looked over. I've seen it, the promised land. I may not get there with you. And they talked about that as our ancestors, we have to set things in motion that we may not never see. But we living today have to set them in motion so that our children can get there. We have to set them in motion so that regardless of our race, our color, party affiliation, we've got to come to a place in this community that we in this together. We've got to come to a place where we are working together, because the time in which we're living in, we can't do this separate. It has to be all hands, black, white, green, on deck, Latinos. And so I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your words of wisdom. They have truly been inspiring. We wish you the best of luck, and keep doing what you're doing. And all of us, we appreciate all of our county commissioners for what you do and how you serve us. And we look forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks in the budgeting as we ask for more money. I've enjoyed this off the coast. There you have it with Commissioner Fleming El-Amin. Thank you so much.